The prince of this world has already been judged. Have you noticed that if one looks around the planet, the good, apparently, are always being obstructed and indeed defeated, apparently? Corresponds exactly to what was shown over a century ago by now to Pope Leo XIII in that strange experience at the foot of the altar after his private mass, when he heard the conversation between Lucifer and the great king. We need the eyes of faith to see exactly what's going on our planet. Essentially, it's about the salvation of souls. Old Nick hates us with a perfect hate because we have taken his place. He wants, therefore, to get as many immortal souls into his kingdom out of pure envy, pure spite. And he knows exactly how to strike, because he never lost that angelic intelligence which, as the brightest of creatures at that time, he had. He has a specific hatred for our Blessed Lady, who by now is the brightest of creatures, and the experts tell us that as well as being shown the incarnation as a test would he adore, he was also given to understand that there would be a creature, this woman. He can't bear it. In the first reading, we have actually a program of life. Let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak. That's concrete. There are some who, once engaged in a conversation, actually are deflecting all new truth. Even when somebody is addressing them, they are immediately working out the answer to the first point, actually, not the whole discourse, and then blocking out completely the further truth. But there are other also deafnesses in the soul. One is precisely to the Holy Spirit, of which the Gospel is already beginning to speak. And I want to dwell on that for a minute today. The Holy Spirit is gentle and courteous. He is the perfect gentleman and will never oblige or bully. This is important. There are, as we go through life, occasions when, if we're not listening, we will miss something of cosmic importance. One is, for a person called to marriage, the right person coming at the right time and not being picked up. But for the person who might have another call, this is actually happening all the time. The Lord is calling as ever he was, and he's not being heard. He can't make his voice heard. We are damaged as a human race. Now, in the experience of the Catholic Church specifically, the supernatural is not that far away. Partly because all the time we're handling it. In the sacramental sphere, God and man are working hand in hand, and things are happening. And also because we do believe, really, in our God and take him seriously, he does do things, and more actually than we think. A priest knows it because he's listening to a lot of confidences. And in the mode of the person, the Lord is acting and talking. In the mode of a travelling person, it's simple, but it's there. In the mode of a more intellectual person, it's perhaps on his level, but it's there. He uses the language, essentially, which will get through to us. And because we believe in the communion of saints, it doesn't stop at death. The frontier is very thin in the communion of saints. Now, we don't make a huge barrier between the official saints and the glorified souls who are actually saints but not canonized. They're all saints. And therefore, this huge family of saints, when they're linked to us, can still do things for us. And they do sometimes. Years ago, when ordained, I was sent back home and then here to Ireland. But the first Mass I celebrated on British soil was immediately after getting back, and in the abbey where I had thought I'd enter straight from school, but they kept me waiting. It's Prynich Abbey. And the novice master, who was still alive, by then in his 90s, served it. It was in Latin, and I remember I was moved by what he said after we came back to the sacristy. He just said this, which has always stayed with me. Don't lose your father. And I thought, that's how it should be done. Every Mass must be one's first. Never get used to the divine. But there was more to that link with him than meets the eye. I'd met him at the age of 18, and I hoped he would be my novice master, but they always kept me waiting. Well, I want to tell you the story behind him. He also had entered at 18, but in a very strange place. He had entered on Caldy Island. It was just after something had happened. Abbot Aylward Carlisle, called in history the Abbot Extraordinary, was an Anglican, part of the Oxford movement, in the wake of the likes of John Henry Newman. It was a movement of revival of also monastic practices. And they founded with Anglican money Caldy Abbey and built it. And the nuns on the mainland opposite had some brides. The Bishop of Oxford, the Anglican Bishop of Oxford, came to make a canonical visitation. What's going on here? I say, we have a lot of incense in this place. Our Lady, as you call her, is hugely honoured. And you have even benediction of what you call the Blessed Sacrament. This and this and this and more must disappear. You get the message? Silence. Abbot Carlisle, we know because I've talked to the person who was witness. He's long dead. But it was Peter Anson who wrote it all down. The same generation as Dom Orban, novice master of whom I'm speaking. What happened? The abbot said, we will go into retreat. We will all go into complete silence. There will be no communication. And then we will come out and we will decide. They all prayed intensely, and to a man, not quite, but nearly, spontaneously, led by the Spirit, said, we will pass over to Rome. It all exploded. Not a penny was coming for the Anglican Church. They were getting bankrupt. what would they do? Well, I want to explain one thing before then. It's this: the notes they found in one of the choir books at that time. It was this eyewitness comment: at this moment, the abbot celebrated at the altar as usual, but at a far faster speed than usual. He rushed into the sacristy, whisked off his chasuble, made no thanksgiving, and called us out. The point was this: they were beginning to doubt whether the Holy Spirit was actually in their sacramental system, and they knew the consequences. So they all came over, practically, and they had to leave the monastery, and the Pope had to ask the Trappists to take it over in their place. And they went to Prynich, but the Lord blessed them, and from Prynich came out Farnborough and Pluscarden. And the Abbot of Pluscarden is now Bishop of Aberdeen. Well, there was something that actually happened, and this is why I want to tell this story. This abbot was very extraordinary, the one who brought them over to Rome. He had precisely my friend Peter Anson as a personal friend of his. And he was far away, actually, from the monastery when he was ill. And he petered out. And in those days, communications weren't what they are. Something happened at the point at which he petered out. There was an almighty rap on the window of Peter Anson, and he knew exactly what that meant. His friend had gone to glory, and because he was so close to him, he wanted to remind him that he would always be with him and with the brethren. It's happened many times. Those who go before us, marked with the sign of faith and on the winning side, are still in touch, and their love has not changed. The proof is this: when a person dies, things start to happen. Often, before his last breath, even though he's in a coma, his eyes will open. He is gazing not at you, but either at the saints and the angels, or at someone in his family. The frontier there is extremely thin, and they go awaited, because the family is on the other side. Welcome. And I've had one or two have asked me, when I die, please, will you come back and send a message? And it can happen. One time, there was a dying monk in London, a Carthusian. It's in the 1500s. And there was a lay brother keeping watch at his side and nursing him. The one who was nursing him whispered this in his ear: "Father, you know that sometimes when friends die, it is not unknown that they can come back and give a message. Could you do that for me?" And he promised he would. He died, and the other one, who was not yet ordained, had forgotten about it all. But what was his shock when suddenly, when he was in prayer, the dead father appeared before him. He was in great glory, and he had this to say: "Yes, but if you only knew the glory of the priors," because they'd just been hanged, drawn and quartered at Tyburn, the first martyrs of the Reformation. And he added this: "Take heed unto thyself." But he wouldn't listen. He went and lost his vocation and didn't resist under the pressure. It's happened also, unfortunately, on the other side. I've told you before, but I'll say again for those who haven't heard it, what happened in the Napoleonic campaign in Russia. How there were generals, actually, they were pretty high up, I think, in the army, who were discussing, in the spirit of the Enlightenment, the possibilities of things after death. And, well lubricated by wine, at the end of a meal in the army mess, one said to the other in French, "If there is something on the other side, let's make this pact, that the first to die will come back and say so." Done. Sometime later, there was a huge battle, and the one who was not killed was actually in bed. He saw the other one before him, holding his side, and said in French, "L'enfer existe, et moi j'y suis. Hell exists, and I'm there." Days later, news came he'd been shot there. But to console you, the saints are very close to us, and they do it too. Some years ago, there was a bishop at Imola. He became seriously ill and close to death. With the statue of St. Philomena beside his bed, he and others prayed fervently for his recovery. Those around his bed heard distinct tappings, then known as St. Philomena's knocks of assurance, which usually signaled the granting of a miracle. A great improvement was then seen in the condition of the Archbishop, and a speedy recovery followed. Pope Pius IX was a great devotee of St. Philomena. His devotion to the saint was confirmed when he bequeathed his pectoral cross to her. It is now worn around the neck of the image that contains her bones. The pontiff honoured St. Philomena with a visit to her shrine and offered Holy Mass on the altar dedicated to her. In 1849, he immortalized the saint when he named her patroness of the Children of Mary and secondary patroness of the Kingdom of Naples. From time to time, friendly knockings are also given to the saint's clients who visit the shrine. One such occurrence took place when the Reverend Paul O'Sullivan, the saint's biographer, visited the shrine for a number of days. One day, while he was praying in the side chapel of the church, where the relics are kept, one of the sisters approached him and asked, "Father, have you received the sign?" When the good priest indicated he did not know about the sign, the nun insisted, "Father, you have come from a long distance and have remained here so many days. The little saint must give you the sign." Saying this, she directed the priest to the altar where the miraculous image is enshrined. And the priest writes, "We knelt in front of the urn and began a short prayer. Suddenly, a sharp report rang out as if the crystal glass had been struck sharply by something hard. The little sister jumped up, radiant with smiles, and she said to me, 'Now you've got it.' It was so distinct and sharp, the Reverend Mother, further up in the church, ignorant altogether of what we were about, jumped round and asked, 'Whom is it for?' So he calmly goes on, indicating that it often happens for those who have great devotion to this hidden martyr of purity. And purity is the great means that Satan has for toppling those who are called. Beware of the prince of this world.